Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter what time zone you're in. Welcome back to Sip and Talk.
It is always so great to be here with everyone.
We are just incredibly thrilled to have all of you, our amazing Sip and Talkers, joining us today. Because, well, today we are looking at something a little bit cold.
And we definitely aren't talking about the weather.
No, definitely not the weather. We're talking about that bone-chilling feeling of emotional distance in relationships. So, okay, picture this scenario.
Right, I'm picturing it.
You find, like, the absolute funniest meme on the internet. You are practically in tears laughing.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. And you immediately send it to your friend, or maybe a partner, fully expecting them to laugh just as hard. And then you wait.
And the waiting begins.
Exactly. An hour goes by, then an entire day. They literally leave you on read for 3 agonizing days. And when they finally reply, it's just a single basic thumbs up emoji.
The universal sting of the digital cold shoulder.
Yeah. Yes. Your blood instantly boils, your chest gets tight, and you swear a blood oath right then and there. You're like, I am never, ever texting first again.
Which is such a common reaction, but it's not just some petty Cold War.
It's not, because, it feels pretty petty when I do it.
It might feel that way, but you're actually running what we call the emotional algorithm.
The emotional algorithm.
Yeah.
Okay, what is that?
It's this hidden underlying logic of human interaction. Today on Sip and Talk, we're decoding those psychological games we play. When you get that thumbs up emoji after 3 days, your brain isn't just being dramatic, it's actually executing defensive codes.
Defensive codes. Okay, I definitely need to understand that mechanism, because my immediate reaction to being ignored is always to act incredibly cold myself.
Defensive detachment.
Yeah, like I instantly flip the switch from, hey, look at this funny dog, to, I don't even know who you are, do not speak to me. Why on earth do we do that?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at how the brain actually processes social rejection. To your neurological wiring, being ignored isn't just a mild social faux pas.
Right.
It registers in the brain's pain centers almost identically to physical pain.
Wait, really? Like touching a hot stove?
Very similar pathways, actually. It is literal social pain. You see, evolutionarily speaking, back when we lived in tribes, being ignored or ostracized meant something very specific.
It meant you were getting kicked out.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be left out in the cold to fend for yourself, which essentially meant certain death.
Oh, wow. So wait, today when I get left on red, my brain literally thinks I'm going to be eaten by a tiger just because they didn't haha my meme.
In a very primitive sense, yes. Your brain triggers this anticipatory anxiety escape mechanism.
Anticipatory anxiety. So it's trying to outrun the pain.
Precisely. To protect your self-esteem and your survival status from further damage, your brain initiates a preemptive strike. You cut ties first.
Because I can't be fired if I quit first.
Exactly. It's driven by the psychological principle of loss aversion. The human brain feels the pain of a loss roughly twice as intensely as the joy of an equivalent gain.
Wait, twice as intensely? So it's not even a fair fight in our own heads?
Not at all.
Okay, let me make sure I'm getting this. Because the perceived pain of losing my dignity feels so, catastrophic. I just shut down the entire connection.
You do.
I'm basically turning the relationship into this ridiculous zero-sum game of whoever blinks first loses. I'm digging a lonely pit to bury myself in just to protect my pride.
And that is the tragic irony of it. You feel slighted, so you build a massive fortress to keep the pain out.
Yeah.
But by doing that, you trap yourself inside.
I guarantee my own isolation.
Exactly. You're safe, but you're entirely alone.
But let me push back on that for a second.
Yeah.
Because if our brains are so hardwired to protect our dignity by running away, what about the people who do the exact opposite?
Ah, the paradoxical reaction.
Yeah, because I know people who get ignored, and instead of freezing the other person out, they suddenly become, the most attentive human beings on the planet.
And double down.
They completely double down. They bring coffees, they constantly text, they apologize for things they didn't even do. Why does the algorithm make them do that?
Well, that reaction relies on a very potent concept in behavioral psychology called intermittent reinforcement.
Intermittent reinforcement. So wait, the other person is accidentally reinforcing my bad behavior by ignoring me?
Actually, it's the reverse. They are reinforcing your obsession.
Oh, wow.
Let's look at the mechanism. When a partner's response to you is highly unpredictable, sometimes they are warm and attentive, but the vast majority of the time they are cold and distant, your brain doesn't just get bored.
It gets hooked.
It gets intensely hooked.
Yeah.
When a reward is guaranteed, dopamine levels in the brain actually flatline. You get used to it.
Right, it becomes boring.
But when a reward is unpredictable, the brain's dopamine centers light up like fireworks during the anticipation phase.
Because you never know when you're going to win.
Exactly. It creates a severe power imbalance. You develop an anxious attachment coupled with what we call the gambler's fallacy.
The gambler's fallacy. Oh, man. It's like, okay, imagine you walk up to a broken vending machine.
A great analogy.
You put a coin in, press the button, and nothing happens. You put another coin in. Nothing. If it finally drops a candy bar on the 10th try, you don't just take your candy and leave.
You certainly don't.
No, you go completely crazy, putting more coins in. You're shaking the glass because you are convinced it's about to pay out again.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. And when you apply that vending machine logic to human beings, the reality is devastating.
Because you aren't showing the other person unconditional love by trying harder, are you?
No. You are rewarding their emotional withholding with your increased effort.
You're just training them to treat you poorly. You're basically saying, hey, if you ignore me 9 times out of 10, I will actually work 10 times harder for your attention.
Which is a very dangerous algorithm to be running.
Okay, but if that vending machine is so clearly broken and it's just eating all of our emotional coins, why do we stay?
Cognitive dissonance.
Right, because if you ask anyone outside of that dynamic, they'll tell the person, just walk away, they're treating you terribly. But the person in it absolutely refuses to leave.
And that is where the sunk cost fallacy takes over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rarely about deep soulmate level love at that point. It's about the sheer terror of losing an investment.
Losing an investment, like staying in a movie theater when the movie is completely atrocious just because you already paid $15 for the ticket.
That's it, exactly.
You sit there and suffer for 2 more hours so you don't waste your money.
And apply that mechanism to years of your life. Your brain looks at the relationship dynamic and says, I have put 3 years, thousands of tears, and massive amounts of energy into this person.
If I walk away right now, all of that was for nothing.
Yes. It becomes the ultimate write-off. So we stubbornly double down. The brain desperately tries to avoid the pain of a total loss by convincing us to keep investing.
We convince ourselves there's a break-even point coming.
A magical break-even point on the horizon, where this person will finally wake up, change, and validate all the suffering we went through.
But that break-even point never comes, does it? The movie doesn't suddenly become an Oscar winner in the last 5 minutes.
It almost never does, unfortunately.
That is deeply unsettling, how our own brains basically hold us hostage. But let's follow that thread. If our brains are so obsessed with not losing an investment, what happens when an outside force tries to force us to lose it?
What do you mean?
Like if my friends or my parents look at that bad relationship and say, you need to break up right now, doesn't that usually completely backfire?
Oh, completely. And that triggers one of the most fascinating glitches in human interaction. The Romeo and Juliet effect.
The Romeo and Juliet effect.
Yes. When a whole friend group or a family strongly opposes a couple, the couple's bond doesn't break. It actually skyrockets.
Why? I mean, that makes absolutely no logical sense. If everyone around me is saying the kitchen is on fire, I shouldn't hug the stove.
It makes no sense until you understand a mechanism called psychological reactance.
Psychological reactance?
Human beings have an intense evolutionary need for autonomy. When our free will is threatened, when someone tells us what we can or cannot do, the brain essentially stages a riot.
A riot, I love that, like setting cars on fire in my own head.
It floods the system with what we might call rebel dopamine to fight off the external intervention.
Rebel dopamine.
So when your parents say, you cannot see this person, you aren't necessarily clinging to your partner because they are your perfect match. You're clinging to them to prove to the world that you are the sole author of your own life.
Wow. So you're riding a high of pure defiance. You're mistaking the adrenaline of rebellion for the passion of romance.
That's a really great distinction, and the cruel reality of psychological reactance is what happens when those outside forces finally give up.
Oh, when they stop fighting you.
Right. Once your friends stop complaining and your parents throw their hands in the air and say, fine, date them, the resistance fades.
And without the rebel dopamine keeping the thrill alive,
the undying eternal love often cools off instantly.
That's crazy.
Without the external threat, the couple actually has to sit in a quiet room, look at each other, and deal with the reality of who they are. And very often, the relationship collapses right there.
Wow. So much of what we think is love is just our psychological algorithms glitching out.
It really is.
But I want to pivot here because we've been talking a lot about our own internal biases and how we trick ourselves. But what happens when someone else understands these codes and uses them intentionally? We really need to talk about the dark side of this algorithm.
We do. Because when these psychological blind spots are weaponized, you enter the territory of emotional manipulation. Specifically things like gaslighting.
Gaslighting gets thrown around a lot on the internet. Everyone uses it. But what is actually happening in the brain when someone is being gaslit?
Well, gaslighting is devastating because it hacks our evolutionary reliance on social proof.
Social proof. Like needing others to validate what we see.
Exactly. As human beings, our senses are flawed. So we are wired to trust our tribe to help us interpret reality.
Right. If I think I saw a snake in the grass, but the 5 people next to me say, no, that's just a stick, I'm going to override my own eyes and believe it's a stick.
Yes. Now imagine the person you trust most in the world. Your primary authority figure in love constantly tells you that your memory is wrong.
Oh, that's chilling.
You bring up something they did, and they calmly say, that never happened. You're overreacting. You're remembering it wrong.
It's like someone quietly hacking into your mental hard drive and corrupting the files.
And it happens slowly. Over time, because you are wired to trust them, your brain stops trusting itself.
Which is terrifying.
You start constantly apologizing. You start recording conversations just to prove to yourself that you aren't going crazy. It is a systematic process to gain absolute control over another person's reality.
That is the ultimate virus in the system. But what about when people accuse their partners of things they haven't even done?
That's a slightly different mechanism.
Because I see this happen all the time, where the most aggressively jealous person is actually the one who is misbehaving.
Yes, that introduces the concept of projection. It's a deeply entrenched defense mechanism. Let's use the most common example. A serial cheater is very often the most suspicious, paranoid person in the relationship.
Right. They're like, where were you? Why did you look at that person? Let me see your phone. Meanwhile, they have like 3 secret phones of their own.
Precisely.
Why do they do that? Do they genuinely believe their partner is cheating?
On some subconscious level, yes. Because sitting with the cognitive dissonance of their own unfaithfulness is psychologically painful.
The guilt is too much.
The ego cannot tolerate the guilt. So to relieve that pressure, the brain projects their own sins onto their partner.
So by accusing you, they get to play the victim.
It's a brilliant, albeit toxic distraction. If they are constantly policing your potential betrayal, they never have to look in the mirror and face their actual betrayal.
It's all smoke and mirrors to protect their ego. Okay, what about the push-pull dynamic?
The push-pull is very common.
I notice some people will intentionally pull you in, make you feel incredibly special, and then just shove you away the next day. They manufacture this artificial distance.
Well, many people do that to create scarcity because we inherently value things that are hard to get. But I want to offer another explanation for the push-pull dynamic.
Okay, what is it?
Often, it isn't a calculated Machiavellian move to increase their market value. It's driven by a profound fear of intimacy.
Wait, let me think about that. They push you away because they are actually terrified of how close you are getting.
Yes. Consider what happens when you treat someone with very low self-worth incredibly well.
You showing them love.
You think you're showing them love. But to their algorithm, your unconditional kindness causes a system panic.
Because they don't think they deserve it.
Not only do they feel they don't deserve it, but they begin to feel an overwhelming sense of emotional debt.
Emotional debt, wow.
They look at your consistent warmth and think, I am broken. I can never, ever repay this level of kindness. Suddenly, in their mind, you've transformed from a loving companion into an emotional creditor.
Oh my goodness, an emotional creditor.
And what do humans do when the debt collector comes knocking at the door?
They turn off the lights, lock the door, and hide. They run away.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense. By being unconditionally loving to someone who just isn't ready for it, you inadvertently become the thing they are most afraid of.
You do.
Okay, this is a lot to process. If we are surrounded by all these flawed codes, our own loss aversion, our fear of sunk costs, partners projecting their guilt, people running from intimacy, how on earth do we survive this?
It requires vigilance.
How do we spot the first signs of toxicity and actually set boundaries that work?
To set effective boundaries, we can borrow a highly visual concept from sociology.
Yeah.
The broken windows theory.
The broken windows theory, I know I've heard of this in the context of city planning, right? Like neighborhoods and crime rates.
Yes. The theory essentially states that if a building has a few broken windows and they are left completely unrepaired, vandals will eventually break into the building and smash the rest of the windows.
Because it sends a subconscious signal to the whole street that nobody is watching, nobody cares, and there are absolutely no consequences.
Exactly. Now bring that into the microenvironment of a human relationship.
Oh, I see where this is going.
If the very first act of disrespect occurs, let's say they show up an hour late to a date and don't even bother to apologize.
Right.
Or they give you the silent treatment for 2 days over a minor disagreement. If that behavior goes completely unaddressed by you, it acts as the relationship's first shattered window.
And by staying silent, just to, keep the peace, I am basically handing them a rock and pointing at the rest of my windows.
You are. Your silence teaches their subconscious that your boundaries are purely decorative. They are suggestions meant to be broken.
It's almost like if you were really sweet and accommodating, but you refuse to stand up for yourself. It's like kindness without a skeleton is just weakness.
Kindness without a skeleton is just weakness. That perfectly captures it.
Wow.
An invertebrate kindness cannot survive the real world. Immediate, honest communication about what you will not tolerate isn't picking a fight. It is repairing the window.
That completely reframes how I think about conflict. Conflict is just window repair.
Exactly.
But speaking of being too sweet, I am definitely guilty of being a massive people pleaser. I want to be perfectly accommodating from day one. I want to give 100%. Is that setting me up to be a broken window?
It absolutely is, and it brings us to a crucial psychological concept known as Bebb's Law.
Bebb's Law.
Bebb's Law is a warning to every people pleaser out there about how the human brain adapts to constant stimuli.
Adapt to stimuli. Like how when you walk into a bakery, you smell the bread, but after 10 minutes, you don't smell it anymore.
Yes. Sensory adaptation. Now apply that to your kindness. According to Bebb's Law, if you are perfectly accommodating, intensely sweet, and giving 100 times in a row, your partner's brain normalizes it.
It becomes their baseline expectation.
It does.
So they literally stop smelling the bread, so to speak.
They do. Then, the single time you are tired or you make a mistake or you finally say no to a request, it is deeply, disproportionately resented.
Why? Because I was just being human for 1 second.
Because their brain perceives it as a massive, sudden drop in quality from the baseline.
Wow. And the reverse of that explains so much, too.
The bad boy effect.
Yes. The classic toxic partner effect. Someone who is deeply flawed and selfish most of the time does one fundamentally basic good deed like they bring you soup when you have the flu and suddenly everyone is praising them like a hero.
It's all about the contrast against the baseline. When you give 100% constantly, your extreme kindness morphs into standard background noise.
Which is so unfair.
It transforms from a beautiful gift into an expected obligation.
So if overwhelming perfection just turns you into background noise, what is the actual solution?
The solution for a stable, long-lasting dynamic is not a one-time overwhelming flood of perfection. It is a steady, manageable trickle of affection.
A steady trickle. You don't drown the plant on day one.
Exactly.
Okay, I have to admit, as much as I'm learning, this all feels a little bit heavy. After talking about loss aversion, rebel dopamine, gaslighting, emotional creditors, are we supposed to just walk around viewing every single human being as a manipulator?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Am I supposed to be suspicious of every person I grab coffee with?
It's vital that we clarify that. Becoming paranoid is not the goal of Sip&Talk. I always like to frame it with a tech metaphor.
Yeah.
You need to understand the protocol, but you don't have to exploit the bugs.
Understand the protocol, but don't exploit the bugs. I like that.
Yes. Learning about these psychological blind spots isn't about becoming some cynical hacker of human emotions. You aren't learning this to manipulate your partner better.
Right.
It's about installing a heavy-duty antivirus software for your peace of mind. When you finally understand why people do what they do and you realize their coldness is often just fear, you stop taking their dysfunction so personally.
That is incredibly freeing. Okay, so let's distill all of these mechanisms down. What are the key things our Sip&Talkers really need to walk away with today?
I would boil this down to 3 major takeaways.
Okay.
Number 1, accept imperfection. Realize that when someone acts distant or confusing, it is very often just their own messy, survival-based defense mechanism kicking in. It is almost always about their fear, not your worth.
Don't internalize their glitch. Got it. What's number 2?
Number 2, regain your control. The moment you sense intermittent reinforcement, that hot and cold vending machine dynamic you need to consciously hit the pause button, step back, Recognize the dopamine loop for what it is and walk away from the machine.
Stop putting coins in.
Exactly. And number 3, establish healthy reciprocity. True, lasting connection only happens when two clear-headed individuals who fully understand their own flaws actively choose to show each other a steady trickle of kindness, supported by the strong skeleton of boundaries.
A strong skeleton of boundaries. This has been absolutely eye-opening. For anyone listening right now who is currently stuck in one of these exhausting psychological loops, or, maybe you're just staring at a painfully empty text thread, my advice to you is to put the phone down.
Step away from the screen.
Go brew yourself a hot, comforting cup of coffee and take a moment to warm up your own freezing heart. Because remember, the absolute best, most important relationship you will ever manage is the one you have with yourself.
Without a doubt.
Now, before we officially wrap up, I do want to add a quick Sip and Talk disclaimer for our global audience.
Always important.
Our show takes an international, objective perspective. This discussion today is purely an exploration of universal human psychology. We have absolutely zero intention to criticize, target, or discriminate against any group, nation, or individual. Our goal, as always, is to empower you to engage in critical and independent thinking.
Question the algorithms, always.
Yes. And speaking of things you should definitely be doing, please make sure you hit that subscribe button for Sip and Talk wherever you are listening right now. We absolutely love bringing these insights to you every single week.
We really do.
Also, on a personal note, I have to give a massive shout out to an old friend's YouTube channel. You all need to go search for Mickey to Life on YouTube.
Oh, yes. Fantastic content.
Mickey just dropped a brand new travel vlog, and it is phenomenal. It'll definitely boost your dopamine in a healthy way. So go check out Mickey to Life, show some love, and leave a comment saying the Sip and Talker sent you.
Highly recommend checking it out.
So we've decoded the games, the glitches, and the firewalls, which leaves us with one final thought to ponder. The next time you send a message and you're left on read, watching those little typing bubbles appear and disappear, ask yourself this. Are we moving toward a future where our digital algorithms and our emotional algorithms become entirely indistinguishable from one another?
A fascinating thought.
Think about that. We will see you on the next episode of Sip and Talk.